It's Julia Renee.
And Kendall Aaliyah. Welcome back to the Know Your Power podcast. Hello, my loves. Kendall here. Unfortunately, today's episode is the same issue that we ran into with Mondays, meaning there is no video format to go with today's audio, but we felt that the audio was so good, we wanted to share it here on YouTube regardless. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I promise next week we will be back to normal.
Welcome back to another episode of the Know Your Power podcast. Kendall and I just got our yawns out before we press record. I have one brain cell.
My stomach's making sounds for me.
You know what is funny though? I went to yoga Monday, and the girl next to me, I can hear her stomach rattling like over and over and over again. And I was like, in my head, I went, "Girl, you need to eat." I was like, "You're obviously really hungry. You need to eat."
It might be like IBS or something. You never know.
That's you. No. Or it could have been like yoga poops.
I've thought about that. I'm like, I feel like I'd be not fart. I was gonna say.
I figured I'd be farting.
Hold on. I was gonna say fighting for my life to not fart, but I almost said farting.
I was farting for my life.
I'm just gonna shut up anyway.
Well, today we're not talking about that at all.
So sorry.
We're going to be talking about emotional eating, like why we do it, how to change it. I do want to put a little trigger warning at the beginning of this episode for eating disorders. Kendall and I we're just so used to talking about it so openly now.
Yeah.
Because we've just been through it and we've worked through it over the past years. So sometimes I forget to say it like at the top of the episode, so I apologize. But Chloe always makes sure to put the warnings in the episodes.
Thanks, Chloe.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about it. But first, I wanted to ask you, what is the first sign that you feel that you've kind of like gone on autopilot with food and kind of lost kind of like the connection with food?
You're saying in like a negative sense?
Yeah, like maybe like you clock out, or you're just like shoveling food down, like you're not really aware.
I feel like for me it's the second that like voice in the back of your head says something.
Oh, that's true.
Where as soon as you go like, you shouldn't be doing that. Or like, are you sure you should do that? Yeah. Or like, what if people were around you? Would you be doing the same exact movement or action, or like grabbing the same thing or eating the way you are? As soon as I have those little moments, and as soon as the main part of my brain talks back to it and is like, shut up, I'm like, oh, we're going downhill. We've lost that.
We've lost the plot.
We've lost the control. Versus, I feel like, honestly, I don't even know how to describe it beyond like, I'm so present with my food that I don't even have that little voice in the back of the head. So when it does come up, I'm like, oh, I'm like unconsciously doing this. I'm not actively making the choice to do this action right now.
True.
If that makes sense.
I've actually never heard anyone describe it that way, but it is like one thing about like your intuition or that like little voice in the back of your head is that it tends to be more of like a whisper rather than a yell until maybe you reach the point where it's like screaming at you, or the universe forces you to see what you're trying not to see.
Yeah.
And I think that is why it is so hard to hear, is because it is kind of like a whisper and a nudge. Like your intuition is there, or that like gut feeling or that voice inside your head, like whatever you want to call it, it's there to be like a gentle guide rather than like force you to do something on its timeline. So I think that's why I've just never heard anyone describe it.
I like don't know how
it's
else
like in the back, and I literally had a visual of it, of being like, hey.
Yeah, it's like the like whole down. Like angel devil on your shoulder, where it's like maybe that negative thought is like, I'm gonna do this and I know I might not feel great after, or I know that I don't feel like I'm in control, or like this is a slippery slope. And that good part is like, are you sure we should do this right now? And it's like, as soon as you listen to that and you're like, you're right, I would feel a lot better if I walked away right now, and then like came back with a different mindset. And as soon as you tell that good side to like shut up, is when it's, I feel like, downhill in my own experience. I don't know if I sound crazy.
No.
I'm like, that's the only way I know how to explain it, is like it's like you're battling yourself. As soon as I start battling my intuition or battling my own thoughts that I know of what I should be doing, is when things are like not a good sign. Yeah.
That's very true. I've just never heard anyone describe it that way. And I like it because I saw it like in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for us, you know, that we struggled with binge eating specifically in the beginning of our journey as well. So I'm all too familiar with like that voice and not necessarily knowing what it was and feeling like I had no control over it. And then now, like being years removed, like you said, you can now recognize when it shows up, and be like, oh, like now I know what that is.
It's like, oh, I know where we're heading.
I know where you are. I know what's going on. Yes, and it is such like an empowering thing because in time, like it's proof that you can undo this pattern of thinking. When I was talking about this with the girls in the Know Your Power program, I was talking about it like in a sense of why we emotionally eat and what emotion are we trying to mask, avoid, cover up. Because a lot of us go to food for that comfort, right? Like it's called comfort food for a reason. So that's the number one thing that you want to think about when you start feeling the urge to go straight to food. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're even just like bored. And
boredom was also huge for me.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this empty space.
That's like when you're checking the pantry and then you walk away and you come back and you check the pantry again and it's like nothing's changing. You're bored. You keep walking in, you keep expecting a different outcome from it.
Yeah, and like this is a pattern that we have learned over the years of I feel X emotion and I go to food when I feel that way. I feel overwhelmed with work, so I'm going to go to food because I think that it's going to solve my problem. It's going to provide me comfort. It's going to make me feel soothed and safe. And if you think about it, imagine you spending, let's just say 5 years, doing this same pattern over and over. When I go through stress at work, I eat. For 5 years, you've been doing that. Stress, eat. Stress, eat. Of course, when you try to have some awareness about it and you want to evolve and get better, it's going to be a little challenging for you to undo this type of pattern.
For sure.
Because you've gone to it time and time again for years.
And sometimes you don't even recognize it is a pattern. Like sometimes you feel like it is a loss of control or like, I don't know why I do that. But as soon as you start like working on this and working to find an answer and find out what your triggers are, usually it's like very apparent to an external source who you might be telling like, oh, I had a stressful day. Do you want to go out to eat? Right. But sometimes we don't notice those patterns in ourselves. Yeah, that too. Where at a certain point, it just becomes like autopilot almost, where you're not like conscious that because of X, I'm doing Y. It's just like, oh, I always do Y.
Exactly. I mean, our brain's job is to recognize patterns and honestly help us make our life easier. Like the way that I like to describe it to my clients is like, how many of you guys have gone to like work or to the gym or even like showered and you have just done these things so much that you're like, how did I get here?
All the time.
You're like, you're at the gym and you're like, wait, like your body just knows like to get you there. That's our brain making it easier for us. Like trying to be like, I got you, girl. I could drive you to the gym without you thinking about it. You can go through your whole shower routine and then forget if you washed your body or whatever.
A crazy moment of this, like with the comfort eating thing is like, I used to have a certain client I think we would train at like 6 a.m. So 5 a.m. every day, I would like try to leave my house early, stop at the same gas station. I would get my energy drink and I would get a little snack for my day. And then I would drive to the client. And it took me like starting prep and realizing I couldn't do that, where there were some days I was pulling up to the gas station. I didn't want an energy drink. I didn't want a little snack, but I was so used to doing that as part of my daily routine that I would like walk in and be like, what am I here for?
Exactly.
And then I'd be like, let's buy a water or something. Like, let's make a good habit out of this because it was such a habit.
It's crazy. And like, I am also just saying that to prove that like, this is all very normal. Yeah. Like our brain is like doing its job and trying to make our life a little bit easier. And that is great when it's a habit that we love and that's good for us. But then when it becomes like detrimental, is like, oh, I have the habit of, binge eating every time that I have stress with work, or I have the habit of going out and just drinking like with my friends anytime that like I go through a breakup, whatever it might be. This is just what I do. That's when it becomes detrimental, not only like to your mental well-being, but like your physical goals that you have with your body.
Agreed.
So I wanted to talk about the thought, emotion, and action loop. So when I was overeating a lot, and most of the time it was binge eating, it's coming from a habit of me doing this like from the age of 15 is when I realized I started doing it, because it was over restrict to be a wrestler, make weight, then eat all of the calories and try to have like all the water and the nutrients that I had starved myself of, because there was times where I was just not eating to make weight. So I realized that I picked up this pattern that I had with food. And this is the best way that I can describe it. And the first thing was, it started with some sort of trigger. So maybe it was like a stressful moment. It would happen with work. Maybe it was family, friends. We've all gotten like an email or a text message that like makes your heart rate like go up. And then the second thing, it would go into like thoughts. So the thoughts would be like, I can't handle this. This is too much. Maybe it's a workload. Maybe it's like, I can't handle this text message right now. Like this is all, I can't do it. So then those thoughts start happening. And then the emotion comes behind it. For me, the number one was anxiety. Really struggling with the anxiety that I was facing. And then also every time that I felt like I was trying again, like I would get back up. And then if I just like messed up a little bit or something, then I was like, I can't do this. Like I'm a failure. Like,
I think that's super common too, where I feel like you feel like if you aren't perfect, why even try? And I think like recovery out of all of this, or breaking some of these habits, they are so like micro changes, and like you have to celebrate the little wins. Because I was the same way, where okay, I'm gonna work on this, and like we're gonna get better, we're gonna get healthy, we're gonna create good habits. And then I would start, and same thing, if I messed up the tiniest bit, I was like, well, I'm a failure and I'm a loser, and what's the point? Exactly. And it took me like restarting that recovery system multiple times to be like, okay, I bought this one item that used to trigger me, or I did that one action that used to trigger these emotions, and I didn't feel that way or do that action this time. That's a win, you know?
You're like, I had a very stressful thing come up with work, or like within my family, and like I used to do this, but this time, like instead, I like went on a walk, or I did 5 minutes of journaling, or maybe I did 10 minutes of work on that task that is stressing me out, which is like, those things would actually be inducive to like help the actual situation when we think that food is going to be the thing that solves it. When in reality, those problems that we're facing, the emotions behind it, they're still going to be there. Food is just a Band-Aid. It's literally just a Band-Aid. So we go from trigger to thought to the emotion, whatever that is for you, to action. So this is where you eat to escape whatever emotion, thoughts that have come up, because you don't want to deal with them, or maybe you don't know how to deal with them. And then what happens is the result: guilt, shame, disconnection with your body, self-sabotage, regret, and then we just like repeat this cycle.
I was going to say that result is typically also a trigger. So then you're right back to the trigger of it all. And that's why it's like so hard to break the cycle. And every person who has ever messaged us or me about like working to break the cycle, I'm like, dude, you are on the biggest step is the first step, and it's the hardest step, which is like recognizing this pattern and being like, I'm actively going to try to break this. Even if you don't do it instantly or do it perfectly, like it is such an easy loop to stay within, and not just for eating habits, with like so many other things in life and like bad habits we're trying to break.
Exactly. I know that like we are talking about, you know, binge eating or emotional eating, like specifically here, but you're so right. Like this is truly the way that we become aware of other habits like in our lives. Like even if it's something as simple as you notice that your body has the habit of snoozing its alarm every morning.
Yeah.
You know, your brain has mapped the pattern of when this goes off, we shut it off.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been doing it forever. So it's going to make your life easier and say, yeah, we're just going to do that for you. So that's why it feels like you're walking through quicksand to try and undo something that's not serving you anymore. So when I was going through like this cycle and I just kept going through it. And I just kept thinking like, if I just had more control, then everything would be fixed. If I restricted more, if I was harder on myself, if I was tougher on myself.
That's so hard with the duality of bodybuilding and being bodybuilders, or even not on, like maybe you're listening and you don't actively like compete in bodybuilding, but you obviously are here because you're likely a fitness girly, right? Or like you care about the gym and taking care of yourself, where it is such a drastic opposition to like feeling like you don't have control over food, where I feel like it's even easier to be hard on yourself, because I feel like we intake so much media that's like perfect fitness people, which is why I think like hopefully us talking about it of like, hey, we're not perfect fitness people and rarely are people ever, that so many people deal with those thoughts. But when you feel like you have to be perfect as a bodybuilder to like switch or grow from this place of like being stuck in a place where you don't feel perfect and you have a lot of like shame and guilt around that, it's hard. I feel like it's even harder.
Especially when like the sport that you have chosen is like the epitome of discipline with food.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
It's like, hello.
So whenever I was struggling with it, like after like riding the high of my first two shows, like winning them, and like people, that's where my social media started blowing up and stuff like that. Yeah. Then I felt like an absolute fraud and like I couldn't share it.
Fraud is the perfect word.
Yeah.
That's how I felt too.
Yeah. I was like, I'm a fraud. And even like after my pro card, getting my pro card, still feeling like a fraud and still struggling with food during that time. And I think what made it even more difficult was not seeing any other like bodybuilders talk about it then as they are now, which there's still not a lot, not any pros. And I was just like, yeah, I'm just the only one who sucks. Okay. I suck and everyone's just perfect, right? Which it wasn't true.
Yeah. I remember there was a week where I was post show. I'm sure to external people, I still looked very lean.
You probably looked
I was
crazy.
Definitely beating myself up. Body dysmorphia was really high, and I was struggling with food for the first time in a long time, because when you're in prep, it's like, oh, you follow this plan every day. Yeah. It's almost easier because the discipline is ingrained for you. You're not like choosing this thing.
And there's like something that you kind of need to look good for versus afterwards. It's like, I mean, not really. Yeah. You can do whatever you want.
I was training a client who had struggles with food at the time, and she was confiding in me. And I was like, I could not relate harder. And I told her exactly what I was dealing with and feeling. And she kind of looked at me like you? But you're a fitness coach. And I'm like, and exactly. Like, and exactly, because you can be anyone and struggle with anything, you know? So it took... I feel like we both helped each other in that moment, because I was like, okay, you see me, you see me
as having it all together.
Yeah. And like, I see you as like hiring a personal trainer and working so hard. Like we're both in a similar mental boat and physically working towards like the same thing, you know? So yeah.
I'm glad that, you know, at least hopefully you guys listening can like, please reach out to us if you if this is you and you're feeling this way, because you are definitely 100% not alone, like whatsoever.
And it's nice to have that comfort of like knowing you're not alone and knowing other people have worked through what you're working through. Is like definitely that, like, and sorry, I know I'm throwing, throwing the episode. Like there's so many tools out there, like books and podcasts and like other creators who have talked about it. And like that helped me the absolute most, because I feel like as soon as I recognized, oh, I'm not alone and people have been exactly how I feel right now and they've gotten to that place, I can too.
I think it's like a sense of, a big part of it is, yes, the actual action that you're doing, you know, like isn't doing good for your spirit, for your goals, but also it's the thing where you feel like something's wrong with you. And that's why I started this episode with saying, like, there is nothing wrong with you. Our brain is doing its job, but it's just this part of it is not serving us anymore. So I think that's why one of my favorite books, and it's the biggest resource. And like, even if you don't struggle with binge eating specifically, this is an incredible book just for food in general, because it starts with the first habit. It's Brain Over Binge by Katherine Hansen. I feel like I have sold her book to like so many people. We need a discount code
Sponsored.
or something. I know we need a discount. I don't want any money for it. I just want to get everybody a discount.
Yeah.
But because at the beginning of it, the reason I loved it, it goes into her story.
Yep.
And I never felt more seen in my life. With
Literally.
I didn't know other people thought this way about food. I didn't know that you felt this amount of like guilt or shame, and you felt like you needed to fix it. And oh man. And then it goes into the logic, how the brain works. And I was like, oh,
she did logically.
it perfectly. Okay, I'm not crazy. There's not something wrong with me. So
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to like the thought emotion action loop. So one thing that I realized when I was going through this cycle was that I needed an interruption. I wasn't going to be able to get rid of the triggers. Like these things are always going to show up. I'm not going to completely get rid of negative thoughts, anxiety, work from stress. It's unrealistic to expect that. But what I could control was I needed to create a pause, a level of self-awareness before I went from the emotion to the action. And this is huge because there was countless times that I just went from, I am feeling X, I'm going to do Y. And I needed to create a moment of pause, a moment of self-awareness to say, hey, you could choose something different here. And for me, this was a number of different things. I created so many different tools, and I'll share them with you guys later, that I could implement in between this moment. And it might feel like you can't, but you can. One of the things that I hear the most, and I know that I did, is I black out. I don't know what's happening. I'm an autopilot. Yep. But you're the one that is in control of this brain that we have been giving and charged to work and operate, unfortunately. And even if that is like, okay, instead of going from stress to food, what if I did stress, 5-minute walk? What if I went from stress to, I'm just going to write a journal entry about what I'm stressed about real quick. And look, sometimes it won't work. Sometimes you'll go on that 5-minute walk and you'll still want to eat all of the food. Sometimes you will have that really stressful email and you're like, I can't handle that. And you're like, let me write a page, and it doesn't work.
Yep.
But the big part here is this time you did something different.
Yeah, I'm like, the pause is the win.
The pause is the point.
Yes.
This time you did something different, because what happened there, that was self-awareness. Self-awareness that, oh, I'm feeling this way, but okay, you know what? I know that normally I want to go to food as my solution, but I'm going to try to do something else instead to give me that stress release, that comfort. And that is big. There was times where I would do this and I would have different like things that I would try, and some days it would work. And then maybe 5 days later, I'd try it again and it didn't work. The goal here was not to be like, look, you tried and that's it, give up. You wake up and you try again. You wake up and you try again. And eventually you can be at a point where this thing happens in a split moment. Like Kendall was saying at the beginning, where probably when you started, you had that little voice come up and it was so shoved down that you couldn't even hear it sometimes. You
if
felt
anything,
like you couldn't
it
hear
was
it.
like more guilt of not listening to it. Where I was like, oh, I'm pretending that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm pretending I don't have control over this right now, actually.
Yeah. And now with just like anything else, like building a muscle in the gym, it takes practice, it takes work, it takes reps. Now, I still have that voice that comes up every now and again, especially with being a bodybuilder. But now it's so fast. Before I would sit and like ruminate on it and it would literally ruin my day. And now it's like, oh, I'm stressed with work. And my mind will go, food fix. And then I go, not anymore. I'm like, not anymore. And then I just like continue.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would get to that point, but we're here. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is the brain, and this it's just, I love talking about the brain, but this is something that Katherine Hansen talks about in the second portion of her brain. But it's like knowing how your brain works in survival mode, and why we go unconscious around food is so important. So I literally like thought that like I was just broken or something was wrong with me. My brain is just trying to protect me the only way that it knew how. So it left me feeling like when I went into autopilot around food, that like, dang, there's something wrong with me. Like I'm broken, but I wasn't. So I wanted to go over the three main parts of the brain. And the first part is the prefrontal cortex. So this is like logic, long-term planning. This is where your goals live, you know? This is the part of your brain that helps you pause and reflect and choose intentionally. But when it's under stress, completely shuts down. Now we have the limbic system. So this is where emotion and memory live. So this is where you associate food with comfort or maybe a reward for something. And this is where emotional eating can get triggered. Mm-hmm. And it's like, basically the way I like to think of it is like cookies equal comfort.
Yep.
Like simple math equation, right? So it becomes that loop. And then we have the third part of the brain, which is the brain stem, which is the survival brain. So this is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. This is the autopilot. It doesn't care about your macros. It cares about getting relief. Because if we go back to caveman times, let's say stress, anxiety meant we gonna die.
Yeah.
Now it's like your workload's a lot. You know what I mean? But like we're still cavemen.
Our brains don't know that.
Cavemen and women. Yeah, but it's still that response you feel in your body. So that's why when you find yourself like halfway through a bag of chips before you even realize that you're eating, it's not a lack of willpower. It's your nervous system being in override. Like you went unconscious because your body believed that it wasn't safe. Like this anxiety I'm feeling, this emotion, this stress, this loneliness, like it's uncomfortable and it's not safe to feel this way. And it's too much. So I need a solution to it now, which is food, right? And your brain just responded the only way that it knew how, right? With a survival mechanism dressed up as like a snack or like a bag of chips or like some cookies, right? Because our brain loves
I just picture like all of our anxiety and emotions like wearing a little like Halloween costume, being like, but if you eat this bag of chips.
It's like, what if anxiety were a snack?
Yeah.
What would it be? Probably like Takis.
Probably Takis. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because they're a little addicting. They don't make you feel great.
Yeah.
They mess up a lot of your internal system.
I also always just think about, I remember watching Inside Out 2 and seeing they brought the character, the emotion, anxiety, and being feeling so seen by this little emotion where, oh man, I was like, oh, this is so sad. But now that you know these parts of the brain, the magic is that neuroplasticity means that we can change it, that you can rewire it. You can build a new pattern that's aligned more with your true self and the goals that you have. And that's exactly what I did when moving through emotional eating, binge eating, and it can work. It seriously can work. But again, it is work. You have to have that level of awareness in that moment to choose something different. And it might not always work, but this is how it gets better. So I wanted to share with you some of my favorite ones. I have so many more that I use, and I'm going to have them linked in the stories from back when I used to talk about it. These videos are from years ago when I was really going through like my learning and my healing process and things that I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And I really need to make a new one, like an updated one.
I had filmed
people ask
one
about it all the time.
but I felt like I was so new to YouTube where I like didn't fully have my thoughts planned out. So kind of same, I was thinking about doing a refresher of like, okay, now I also feel like I'm removed enough to be honest with myself about like some of the patterns and some of the things that had helped me, instead of like still trying to figure it out and talk about it as I was figuring it out. Yeah.
A lot of mine was like, I was just so excited about everything that I was learning that I wanted to share it with everybody.
I get that.
But like I still use them to this day. So I'll link them in the stories, but I'll just give you guys three. Number one is come to your senses, and that is using your senses to come back to the present moment. So what are 5 things that you see, 4 things that you feel, 3 things that you hear, 2 things that you smell, and 1 thing that you can taste? So this will pull you out of your survival brain and act as a pause from the emotion to action, so that now like you're back into your body and you can choose to do something different. So the way that this can simply look is, say that when you're on the couch, that's typically when this happens.
Yep.
It's at the end of the night, you're bored, and you just know around this time every night, my body wants to go to the pantry and stare at it in the fridge. And then it ends up turning into a whole food fiasco at the end of the night.
I feel like even before that, like for so many people, and me included at the time, it's like even driving home, like that drive home from work or the last thing, like you almost are already building up those thoughts of like, I can't wait to do this action when I get home, because this is when I usually try to take comfort in food. So like even recognizing it back then when those thoughts are forming, instead of like waiting for in the moment, start to like preemptively help a little bit.
Yeah. The drive. It's always the drive. When I was struggling with like the drive, and it was the need to like go to a gas station and like buy a bunch of
like
stuff,
fast food, because it's easy and you don't want to go home and cook, like those little actions.
One thing I would just say to myself was, you just keep driving straight. Like you just keep, because my body knew how to get home from work or whatever. I was like, you just keep driving. You just keep driving. And like, eventually I would be home and I'd be like, oh, look, that's a win. We made it. Yeah. We made it home without going to the gas station.
That is in its way, its own form of pause, because it's like, okay, I didn't do that action that maybe like that initial thought I had wanted me to do. And so you at least, again, there is wins, and then there are what feel like failures, but they're just like moments of getting used to these new patterns where when you get home, it's like, maybe you go back out and go and get that thing you were wanting, but at least you gave yourself time to like actively think about it and maybe practice some of these first.
Exactly. Yeah. It is really, it's huge. The next one is called Name It to Tame It, emotional labeling. So say the emotion out loud. Like, I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm angry, and I don't know why. So there are some times where we don't really know what we're feeling. I'm one of those people that I need to take time to process what I am actually feeling. So like whenever I am in like, maybe it's conflict with like a partner or a friend or something, I ask for space, like, hey, I need like this amount of time. I will come back and we will have like this conversation. But for me, like, I need to journal. I need to sit with it. I can't just, because if I do, man, I am gonna say something to you that I don't mean.
Fair.
And I'm like, nobody wants that. So sometimes it is hard to like actually label these emotions. So if you're someone that struggles with that, try giving it a color. For me, it's always red. No, just kidding.
I see red.
I'm just kidding. No, like if I am angry, like maybe it's like red, or if I'm lonely, maybe it's like more blue.
This is like my favorite thing to do, even like now currently in prep, if I have certain emotions, like I literally don't even expect my partner to be listening, but I need to actively talk out loud about like, I did this today and this is how I'm feeling and I'm going to do this better tomorrow. And it's like, does he care? Probably not.
Like, cool, bro.
But I like need to say it out loud, because if I feel like I'm beating myself up over something, or I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious, like I need to say out loud, like, this happened. It's making me anxious. This is what I'm going to do about it. Like I actually need to like put it out there, because then I'll do it. Versus if I let it fester, then it is that little voice where you're like, you're fine, you know? And then you're not giving it a real tangible emotion.
Oh yeah. Like it'll feel, if you are, I love that you said that, because it'll feel like you have bees buzzing in your head if you don't get it out in some sort of way. And whatever way that works for you, like Kendall's like, okay, let me just like talk it through.
I just yap it out.
And sometimes she'll just say, I'm just talking it through. And I'm like, cool. And I say like, I got it. Me, I'm like, let me go journal. I'm like, let me go. And then like, I have to like run upstairs and I'm like, I write, because I like to see it visually on paper. And I'll usually work it out through that. And then I come back and I'm like, I was pissed.
I'm such a I'm such a slow writer where that is my outlet.
I break my hand.
No, exactly. I'm like, and I'm such a psycho about my handwriting where I'm like, well, it has to look pretty.
She writes like a typewriter.
Literally. But then I'm like, I feel like speaking it is so much faster for me, where like I would love to go journal, but I'm like, if I don't just say it now, I'm probably going to forget and then I'm not going to be able to work through it. So I'll say it first and then I'll journal once I'm like, I got most of that out. Let's hit like the bullet points.
Yeah. Mine is like, I need to take space from you. I will come back at this time tomorrow or 30 minutes.
Give me an hour.
I was like, because I'm going to say something I don't mean. And then it's journal. And sometimes it's 6-7 pages. Yeah. I'm telling you.
See, I think my hand would fall off.
Yes.
Respect
and then I'm
though.
like, I am crafting the text message now. Everything is perfectly. I got this. But whatever that is for you, but when you can name the emotion, it reduces its charge, because then it literally just sits in your head and it might feel uncomfortable to say it or to speak it, but it is always better just let it out so it doesn't just stay there. And it's that moment of awareness that you can do something different.
When I worked with Iron Willed, they did like a demons collection, which was actually really cool, where I think like one was anxiety, one was like overwhelmed. And then I think it was like one or two other like thoughts we have that become these demons. And like they had us each as athletes, like make either a little video or like write out like how we feel about that and what our own personal demons are. And I remember writing about like, as soon as you recognize that it is this external thing, it's so much easier to know how to handle it. Because when it just feels like a feeling, it's like, well, I just feel this, it's a part of me. But when you're like, no, like that emotion exists like outside of you, here are steps to get over it or pass it or like beat or fight said demon or whatever you want to use as your analogy. But I think naming it makes it like tangible. And then you're like, oh, that's just anxiety. Like we know her.
Yeah, like Inside Out. Yes, like literally. Like when I was watching that movie, oh my God, I remember like crying during the scene where anxiety is taking over her and she's sitting in the cage, because like I've struggled a lot with anxiety, but it's gotten better because I do these things when I know that I'm feeling that way. And seeing her in the cage, like she's trying so hard to be perfect, like she wants to be the best athlete, like an anxiety in her head is running around like crazy. I cried and I was like, no, I'm her. That's me.
Yeah, I feel that.
And the last one, this is a big one. It's the somatic shift. So emotion is energy in motion. So you can't always just think your way out of it. You have to move it.
Yes.
So a lot of these emotions, they get stored in our body. I was not a believer of this until like, I'd say the past year. And that's why it feels so good, like when you are crushing like a lifting session, because there is an emotional release there. So whether this is like shaking out your hands, like going for a walk, sometimes I say, I'm going to go lift about it. And that doesn't mean that you use the gym as your therapy.
Yep.
Also get a therapist, please. But there is power in that where you can use it. The amount of times that I went to the gym and like have cried because my body was carrying so much emotion that I didn't realize is insane. Hug yourself, like take 10 deep belly breaths. This is really good for people that do struggle with anxiety, because when I am anxious, my breaths are like, like I feel like I can't breathe. So I will intentionally sit there and be like, you are going to breathe.
Yeah.
Okay?
It like brings you back to your body too. So your mind stops racing.
Yeah. The other day I was struggling with something in my personal life, and it's just crazy because I did all of these things where it was like, I need a break. I will come back to you X date. And then I went and journaled 6 to 7 pages about it. And then that night I just happened to have yoga. I am so present in my body that I like, when something is going on in my body and it's not like good, I will usually cry at yoga, like at the end. And that's exactly what happened. And I was like, I went through all of the little things.
Yeah, I was like,
and it actually helped. And I felt better.
It's so good to pair these together, because like you do sometimes need that like physical, and also like using it as a a temporary redirection too, like going back to the whole like pause and rewiring habits, where like if I'm emotional, I much rather lift. It's more fulfilling. I don't have a lot of those like negative feelings afterwards. If anything, I feel like so much more relieved. And that's might be what I need as my first movement. And then I can actually voice it, think about it, write it down, like do those steps too. So like maybe you need that physical release first of like, I need to just like express this somehow with my body and then go into the mental side.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Whatever works for you, whatever combo works for you. And the other day I just did that and was like, oh, cool.
I feel better.
I know exactly what I need to do about this situation.
Perfect.
That's great. But that's basically it, guys. Like, I'm saying that's basically it. I know that's a lot,
it's a
but
lot.
The thing is if you're sitting there feeling like, oh my God, something is wrong with me, like, why do I struggle with food like this? Am I always going to struggle with food like this? Like, I feel like I can't stop. It's not true. There's nothing wrong with you.
My stomach just made that loud sound. I was like, it's not true.
Speaking of food, are you hungry? There's nothing wrong with you. You're human. You're learning. You're growing. And this is just another opportunity for us to have more self-awareness and have some pause in between this pattern that we've been doing, some of us, like forever and ever and ever. Try these practices if this is something that you guys also struggle with too. You can always DM the podcast. You can DM Kendall and I individually. You are not alone. Even if it's like somewhere in the comments, like you can find other people too that have similar experiences. Or if you have like a different practice that you do to help with like pattern interruption, put it down in the comments below because we would love. I always like to think of it as I have a tool bag that's always like attached to me. I look at it as like a fanny pack and I will pull different ones out. I have so many more that like I've just done. And I'm like, is this one, let's try this one. Let's try this one.
Because sometimes you need multiple. Sometimes you need all the dang tools. Because if you're really struggling or really feel like you're in the thick of it, like you need to try multiple things sometimes to pull yourself out of the habit cycle.
Exactly. Yeah. But you're not alone.
At all.
And we love you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode and comment down below so we can have some more people that, you know, are your little buddies. So as always, we love you all so much. You're more powerful than you think.
Bye. Bye.